In example 4.7, we are being asked to use the graph of f, which is given by a absolute value equation. So this is an absolute value function. And we're supposed to use that to obtain the graph of g of x is equal to 1/2 times the absolute value of x. So we can certainly see that there is an absolute value function built into this equation, but then there's this extra multiplier here of 1/2. So in other words, little a, which is representative of the multiplier, is equal to 1/2. Now, if a is equal to 1/2, then that would mean that the absolute value of a would also be equal to 1/2. So once we determine the absolute value of the multiplier, we have to decide which of the two categories does this fit into. Is this going to be a stretch, or is this going to qualify as a shrink? Since 1/2 is less than 1, this means that I'm going to have a shrink. And I want to specify specifically that it's vertical. So I'm going to write that I have a vertical shrink by 1/2. So it tells me that I'm shrinking, tells me by how much, and it tells me in which direction to expect that to occur. So let's go ahead and draw the original parent function, the absolute value function. And since I underlined it in red, I'll go ahead and graph it in red. Try to color coordinate on this. And that will be f. And then I want to be able to graph g. So I have to think about the different points that are on the graph. And the definition says that I'm supposed to take the y value and I'm supposed to multiply it by the absolute value of a. So I want to look specifically at a few points. Let's say, for example, this point right here, which is at the origin. Pink's not a good color. Let's use blue. There we go. So that point right there is the point 0, 0. So if I take the y value and I multiply it by 1/2, it's still going to be 0. So that point doesn't actually change. But let's say that I go to the point here at 1, 1. Okay, so if I take the point at 1, 1 and I multiply the y by 1/2, then the y value now becomes 1/2. So it's not actually going to be at 1, 1. My point is now actually going to be, I didn't mean to move those, let's put those back. My point is actually now going to be at 1, 1/2. So I'm going to put this red point back. There we go. And then let's say I go to another point. Let's go to this point here that's at 2, 2 on the original function. So if I take the point at 2, 2, and again I multiply only the y value by 1/2, then the y value would become 1. So that gives me a new point located at 2, 1. I'm not changing the x value on any of these points. All I'm doing is changing the y value. So when that happens, I'm still going to get a V shape. And I can do this on the left-hand side as well, and it's going to look like this. So I still get my V shape. It's just not at the exact same angle, and that's because of the vertical shrink by 1/2.